What's up, everybody? Um, Here, week two in a row out of three, which I'll be 100% honest with you, I absolutely love. I wish we could have racing on every weekend. So I'm excited to be here with you on this Tuesday, and then I get to be with here on next Tuesday as well. So very excited for back to back to back weekends. This being week two out of three. So good old Netherlands, Zandvoort this weekend for the Dutch Grand Prix. It was a pretty exciting race in the sense of strategy. A little safety car at the end kind of, shook things up. But it was, a race that I said last week would be tough with passing. You kind of going to sit in a line for most of it, so that one, qualifying would be important, but also race strategy would be important. And I think if you're on the nerd analyst side of things, I think you really enjoyed the race. Not too many overtakes on track, but again, the nerd side was pretty cool. And as the wonderful Formula One subreddit page had a whole bunch of good nerd stuff on there too, so I got some of that stuff on there. Shout out to a couple of different people when we go over it, but it's just cool to see how many people are interested in Formula One and how fast some people can break down the technical data. I'm here just kind of talking about the mumbo jumbo, and these guys are putting actual numbers and charts together for you guys to look at. So, as I got up on the screen here, just a little, little thing. I want to talk with you guys about the race as much as I want to talk about it myself. The reason that I do like a live show is because I want to be interactive with you guys. And that's why, I think, at least for right now, I don't want it to be as much of a podcast where I'm just talking. Because if that was the case, I'd probably grab a co-host. We'd chat about the race, wouldn't probably be live, or wouldn't the focus wouldn't be live, and then we'd probably go on Spotify or something. But we're YouTube living it up because I want to hear your guys' thoughts. I want feedback. I want to hear different opinions, because as we're going to talk about today, there was a late race call by Mercedes on strategy. I kind of laid out some of the options, what I think were mostly all of them, but there's probably other options I didn't think of, what I think is the right strategy compared to maybe what you think is the right strategy, or maybe you got a link to some better data, so you really think in your head what's the right strategy. But don't hesitate. You got a question, even if I'm not talking about it, I'll just wrap up with what I'm saying, and we can chat about that. So still working on the live call-in feature too, so that way you guys can actually just talk about it in person instead of having to type away. But don't be hesitant to fly any questions or comments that you got, because there's some good stuff that went down this weekend. So I'll probably spend most of the time on the Formula One results page on the web here today. Found that was a good way to keep everything on track last week and kind of show results and break things down. But Zandvoort this week, I think it was the second year in a row, and it was also the first year since the 80s that Formula One has been there. So they took a long break. Again, not too many passing on track, but they opened up that last DRS zone like they talked about. They tried in practice, it worked. So they pushed it, I guess you would say, further away from the start-finish line, more into that last banked corner. I think it provided maybe a few more passing opportunities, but still people were, getting stuck behind each other in kind of a DRS train. You get to a track where there's not a lot of passing in the middle of the track. The way these guys kind of save and use their energy is they'll harvest their energy through the middle section of the track where there's not a lot of passing. And then they'll deploy it on the straightaway to cover off the guys behind them who have DRS. If those guys with DRS can't pass, then they go into another. Basically, they're spending the whole lap harvesting and then kind of using it again on the straightaway strategically. So these guys are no dummies. So when you have a track that only has one passing DRS zone, another DRS zone, which I think showed maybe one pass, but not a bunch of passes. It's kind of that's what's going to cause that single file line. But practice, I don't think there was anything jumping off the charts exciting. Again, I'm a big Mercedes guy, so they looked fast all weekend, which was cool. But that's it. Nothing. Max Verstappen went out in FP1, which was kind of alarming to some people, because they are allotted practice gearboxes and then race gearboxes. And he's already used his allotment of race gearboxes, so If that gearbox was no good and it needed to be changed, and it was the race one, he would have taken a grid penalty again like he did last week. So that was kind of like everyone was eyes in on that. But as it turned out, no need for a grid penalty for him. So that was kind of it. I think Yuki got into it in final practice 3 before qualifying. But as we'll see in the results, he pulled back together his weekend and had a pretty good weekend. So start off here. We'll go to the web. I will pull up kind of our qualifying results. So we got Max Verstappen first, Leclerc second, Carlos Sainz third, so Ferrari 2-3, Hamilton fourth, Sergio Perez fifth, George Russell sixth, Lando Norris seventh, Mick eighth, Yuki ninth, and Lance Stroll, who made his way into Q3 but wasn't able to put in a lap because of a mechanical issue, which kind of stunk. He might have been fighting for that ninth place, and it stinks when you put all that work in to get into Q3 and then nothing. But if you watched Q3, I think the big thing is that Max Verstappen lays down his amazing lap. Leclerc and Sainz laid on their good lap. Then Sergio Perez is kind of next in line, and coming out of the last corner, essentially, he spins out. Behind him is Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, both on phenomenal laps. And because Sergio Perez spun out in the last corner, yellow flag comes out. They're not able to finish those laps. And this will play into the race. But realistically, Lewis should have been, I think he was a little bit up on Max, but he knew that the straight line speed of the Red Bull, he probably wouldn't have kept that. But realistically, Lewis should have been second, probably third at absolute worst. Same thing with George. He probably should have been, second to fourth, not sitting down there in sixth. And that affected George's race because Lando gets him right off the start. So, not controversy. That's just how that goes. Sergio Perez obviously wasn't doing that with intention because he was trying to get in the best lap that he could. But his spin on the last corner causes Hamilton and George Russell, in my opinion, to start out of place. And I think they proved that on Sunday with their pace. Usually they've been lacking on Saturdays with pace, and then they show up on Sundays with a good race car that's like better in the long runs. But they actually showed some speed in qualifying, but they unfortunately weren't able to show all of their capabilities. So got Gasly 11th, Ocon 12th, Fernando 13th, which is they're a little bit out of place with how they've been running all year. You'll see in the results they did much better. They recovered so well. I've actually read something that like a computer simulation said that like the best Alonso was going to finish was like 9th, and he ends up finishing like 6th, I believe. And just another solid year, which is so confusing that he's going to Aston Martin next year because I think he's in better equipment. Joe Guan Yu 14th, Albon 15th, Bottas 16th, Danny Rick 17th, which is nuts when you look at his teammates up in 7th spot that he's that far off. The heartbreak doesn't end for Daniel Ricciardo. It seems like if you're a fan of his, every week you just want him to do good, all the drama around him. You want to put in some good qualifying, good finishes before he leaves McLaren because we don't know what's going to happen next year. He's already talked about taking a reserve driver role just to stay in the sport. So you just hate to see that. Kevin Magnussen 18th, Sebastian Vettel 19th, out in Q1, actually put in a purple first sector, a green second sector, and was probably going to have a pretty good lap, especially with that purple first sector, and spins out himself in the last corner in Q1, gets into the marbles. So he doesn't get a lap, he's out, and then Latifi down there in 20th spot. So that was qualifying. As you see here, they're only off by couple hundredths of a second, first, second. That's why if Lewis couldn't have gotten first or second, there's about a full 10th almost to Carlos Sainz in third. So I definitely think he would have slotted in third, and I believe that would have made a difference. So the starting grid didn't change too much because of penalties. Everything pretty much looked the same. We'll kind of skip to race results to kind of help us tell the story of the race. So Max Verstappen gets off the line first, no problem. Charles Leclerc second. Carlos Sainz third. And then Lewis Hamilton gets Sergio Perez off the start, which is great. So Lewis is running fourth, Sergio fifth. Lando gets George Russell for sixth. So Lando spent a couple laps ahead, but George ended up getting that sixth place back. And the race was, pretty good at the front of the field there. There's some mid-battle stuff we'll talk about after. But so they run this first stint of the race, kind of like I just said. Lewis starts to get a lot of gain ground on Carlos Sainz. Lewis is the first driver on the medium tire in fourth place. And he's gaining ground on Carlos. Still struggling to pass him because Zandvoort's so hard. Can't get past him, but is fast. Sainz ends up pitting. Hamilton stays out. Overcuts him on a pit blunder that we'll talk about in a second. Same thing. Overcuts Charles Leclerc, who pits. And then essentially overcuts him. It's there is definitely. I wish I had a pit graphic like I had a couple weeks ago from Hungary. Whoever made that did a phenomenal job on F1 TV. Really kind of shows like who pitted where and moves everything around. But the story of the race is that Lewis Hamilton pits one time for hard tires. So he started medium. He runs 28 laps. He pits for hard tires. So he finds himself, I believe, about second in the race or third. Max Verstappen's in first, okay, with a big advantage over Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. Leclerc's second. Poor Ferrari, that gets to be a point where they tell Leclerc, Hamilton just has too much pace. If we stay out, we're probably going to get third, if not fourth, because Lewis and George were coming on that hard tire. So they needed to two-stop, and Max needed to pit stop one more time. But the big story of the race was that Max was going to have to pit for a second time, and he was going to come out definitely behind Lewis Hamilton, and he was right on the edge of coming out behind George Russell. So he would have pitted for a second time, most likely on medium tires, maybe hard. We'll never really know. And then he would have had to pass George Russell and Lewis Hamilton for the win. Now, I have some data later to show you guys. Eventually, I think Max was the fastest guy. It was kind of his race to lose, but the race would have been much harder that Max had to pass George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Some things that happened before we finish up with this race. Lewis Hamilton gets to Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez always drives Lewis Hamilton extremely hard, holds him up for about a lap. Lewis ends up passing Sergio Perez, and then if you watch the race, there's a big blunder with Sebastian Vettel coming out of the pits. Now, hearing some stuff today, his race engineer did tell him that most likely he would be right in the middle of this mess between Hamilton and Perez. It's very easy for us to sit back and be like, why didn't he just pull out of the way? My mind, he needed maybe a little bit more information from his race engineer. I believe he had a little bit of a gap, and I believe the race engineer said that. But I think, we're seeing everything from this bird's eye view while we're watching the race. But Sebastian doesn't really know what's going on. He comes out of the pits. His natural instinct is to go fast, right? That's what racers do. But Hamilton and Perez are right behind him. And when they come out of turn one, there's kind of nothing that he could do through turns 2 and 3. They're just kind of the S's. There's just no passing. And then he gets into turn 4, and he runs high, probably thinking in his mind that he's trying to give Lewis the inside. But unfortunately, in turn 4, that very nice banked corner, the high line was kind of the line to be in. So he's in Lewis Hamilton's way. Lewis eventually gets him coming out of that. Vettel receives a time penalty for that. Lewis, between the battle with Perez and the deal with Vettel, ends up losing 3 seconds. That's kind of an issue. But I think I just think it's real easy to say, and you heard Lewis freaking out on the radio about it. But unless Vettel's race engineer was like, hey, you should definitely let these two by, there you have a gap behind, it's hard for him. And then once he got in the way through, turn 2, there was no way he was getting out of the way easily. I'm sure if he thought he went to the bottom slow and Lewis would have ran him over, he's probably thinking, I'll be in trouble there, so let me just go high through turn 4. So I think it's a tough deal. I think it's just one of those things where Lewis is not catching that much luck, which I know no one feels bad for him because he's caught great luck the past 7 or 8 years with amazing cars and championships, so no one feels bad for him. But that could have mattered. If you didn't lose that 3 seconds, That's an extra 3 seconds that Max would have potentially been behind him if a second stop occurred under normal circumstances. So like I said, Max is running first, Leclerc is second, but Lewis and George are both catching them on these hard tires, and it's starting to know that they're only going to pit once, and that their car is actually holding up some speed on these hard tires, and that we're going to have a race at the end. It's, like I said, dead nuts that we know for a fact that Max is going to come out behind Lewis, and he'll potentially come out behind George, and then have to pass both of them for a race win, which, as we saw later on in the race, there's nothing more exciting than a Lewis-Max battle for the lead. Unfortunately, Yuki Tsunoda stops on track. This is what I believe happened. He stops on track for a long time. They release a virtual safety car. Max comes in, puts on the hard tires. He gets a free stop. I believe at that point, Lewis and George both come in for medium. But because of the cheap stop, takes less time to pit under a virtual safety car. Max Verstappen comes out in first, Lewis in second, and then George Russell in third. So while this is happening, Yuki Tsunoda, I believe, if you watched the show, I believe he thought he was done, so he loosened up his belts. Then he got the car fired and came back into the pits. Okay, his pit stop was so long. I think his crew in there is clearly buckling up his seatbelts for him. And then they send him back out, and he brakes again. And we have another incident on track. So all these cautions just ruin that strategy. If this race went green all the way to the end, Lewis Hamilton is in first with George in second, and Max is going to have to pass them for the lead. So between all that, kind of all fizzles out. At this point, Max is on a hard, Lewis is on a medium, George is on a medium. And Max had like a 10-second gap that he was keeping kind of well. They weren't his favorite tires. A few more laps down the road, Valtteri Bottas brakes, causing a full safety car. All right. So now Max is in first, Lewis second, George is in third, Charles Leclerc is in fourth. So if you're watching the race, first safety car lap, Max comes in to pit. They keep Lewis and George out, and Leclerc comes in. So now Lewis assumes the lead. George is in second. Max is now in third place with fresh soft tires, and Leclerc is in fourth with fresh soft tires. They bring all the cars through the pit lane, which was maybe kind of confusing if you were new because of the accident on track. They're driving down pit lane. They don't say anything to Lewis about pitting. I think he doesn't want to pit because he knows his best shot to maybe win the race is with him in first, George in second, and Russell in third, or Max in third. They drive down the pit lane, and you can see it as clear as day if you watch the onboard. Lewis is the first car driving down pit lane. He's not pitting. He looks, and he sees all his crew members out. And then when he sees his crew members out, he looks to the right and looks in his mirror. And inevitably, George wasn't that far behind him, so he sees George pull us in the pit to get fresh soft tires. At that time, Max takes over second place. George comes out in third. Charles Leclerc is in fourth. And that's when the race was essentially over at that point. Lewis just starts freaking out on the radio, and I don't blame him. There was maybe 15, 12 laps to go at that point. So you're restarting with Lewis in first on medium tires, which the Mercedes have had trouble firing off their tires, getting them to go good. Max in second with fresh soft. George in third, fresh soft. Leclerc in fourth with fresh soft tires. Soft being the better tire for a shorter run, and it's going to heat up quicker. They're lighter on fuel too at the end of the race, so the tire's not going to have the same degradation that it had at the beginning of the race. So Lewis is freaking out on the radio. Why would you give up the track position? Why would you give up the buffer? In Lewis's mind, that was his best shot to win the race, and I think he kind of knew the race was over. Go to a restart, literally coming out of the last corner, down the front stretch to take the green to finish the last umpteen laps that were left. Max Verstappen blows past him down the straightaway. Lewis starts swearing on the radio. But again, this is what I go back to last week where we shouldn't have taken Fernando Alonso's comments as like, oh my gosh, he's an awful person. These drivers say things when they're in the heat of the moment, when their adrenaline is spiked higher than you could most can ever imagine. That's why we shouldn't take it that serious. Lewis just going off on the radio. He feels like the race was stolen from him, from his team. And then if you ask him at the end of the race, they ask him how he's doing. He says he's okay now. He was mad, but totally calmed down. But it just goes to my point that we should not take drivers' anger and stuff. We shouldn't blow it out of proportion with these guys. We're getting more radio messages than we ever did before, but we shouldn't, in the heat of the moment, it just is what it is. Most will never understand what it's like trying to win that race. About a lap later, lap or two later, George Russell passes Lewis Hamilton. They almost get into it. I think Lewis kind of threw a bad block on George because he was flustered. He knew the race was slipping away, and he's so badly trying to get a win this year. So Lewis is in third. Another lap, Charles Leclerc on the fresh tires. Another lap or two, Charles Leclerc on the fresh tires goes past Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton maintains that fourth position. And we're looking at our race results here. Max first, George second, Charles third, Lewis fourth, Sergio Perez fifth. If you watch the race, there was a little battle for fifth. Carlos Sainz actually passed the line fifth, but because of an unsafe release, finished in eighth because of a 5-second time penalty. Perez fifth, Alonso sixth, Norris seventh, Carlos Sainz eighth, Esteban Ocon ninth, Lance Stroll 10th. All right, so that rounds out your top 10. Pierre 11th, Alex Albon 12th, Mick, who started in the top 10, 13th, Vettel, who started 19th, not a bad run, 14th. He honestly showed this speed, if not more, throughout free practices, so that was probably a little disappointing for him. Kevin Magnussen 15th, Joe Guan Yu 16th, Magnussen 15th, and he bounced off the wall in lap 1. So decent run by him. Ricardo 17th, again, just not all right. Latifi 18th, and then Bottas and Yuki both broke. There's two things here. I made a chart of our this is sorry. This Project F1 is a great blog. And they wrote Alpine's two-pronged attack on Netherlands. So basically, if you're into the strategy of Formula One, it's always better to have two of your cars to play strategy games against other people, whether it be you're first and third, and another team has a driver in second and ninth. Well, you can play games running first and third against that guy in second place because the other teammate's in ninth. So you have an advantage, just like playing basketball or any sport, 2 versus 1. So because Norris started ahead, 7th place, but if you look back to the results, Fernando Alonso gets 6th, Lando gets 7th, Ocon gets 19th. Don't forget, Alonso started 14th, and then Esteban started 13th. So, great recovery drive. But you look at kind of this pitch strategy, it's kind of mess here. Alonso was 4.47 second, or 4.42 seconds behind Ocon versus a pit stop. Then they pitted him early on hard tires, ran him longer, and he gained 9.225 seconds. All right. And then after the pit stop, lap 19, his advantage was back down to 4.677 seconds. So Ocon was going to have fresh tires, but they gained a lot of track position in this green right here. And if you look, this is starting from lap 0 throughout the race. Lap times starting with 74 seconds, increasing to 80. That Lando starts off with the best pace. All right. And then they pit Alonso here. He's the solid line. They pit him early around lap 12. All right. So now his pace drops way down, okay, underneath, okay, Norris. That's where he's running all these laps, couple seconds almost faster, almost 2 seconds faster. Then they pit Ocon after. Then they're all running similar lap times here. All right. Then they leave Ocon out, or they leave Alonso out. They pit Ocon. Norris has to pit. Now he's pitting 1 versus 2. So the first safety car, they left Alonso out. No, first safety, the virtual safety car, they pitted Alonso, but I believe they put softs on his car. Then Norris was behind him, and then the second safety car, they pitted Ocon, so he had fresh tires. So Norris and McLaren was just in this game trying to fight the two Alpines on a strategy that was tough when your teammate is in 17th place. And as much as I love Daniel Ricciardo, I do like Lando Norris. And seeing like things like this happen, if you really play out the strategy game, things like this are happening because Lando doesn't have a teammate running near him. Alpine wouldn't have been able to play all these games. If you have, it's like I said, the 2 versus 1 basketball analogy. If you're playing 2v1, it's easy. Spread yourselves out, keep passing the ball back and forth. But you put another man in there, 2v2, now you're kind of only worried about one, if you're one person, you're worried about the guy in front of you, and then the other teammate is worried about his guy. Same thing. If you have another driver running close, Alonso might be worried about Norris, but they can't play games with Ocon because they're worried about Ocon and Ricciardo if Ricciardo is out there. So that's kind of one of the midfield kind of strategy battles that was going on through the race that Alpine just did a phenomenal job with. Again, it makes me... I can't believe that Fernando's leaving. It's definitely, in my opinion, because of long-term contract issues. But they seem to have the car, and they seem to be rolling out decent strategies, even maybe better than McLaren. I don't know if I would say it's better than McLaren because they have 2 versus 1, or if they're just better in general. But whoever gets that seat, because I do not believe it's been announced, unless I'm having a big blunder here. I believe the Alpine seat is still open. Whoever's going to get that ride so far this year, it looks like it's going to be a pretty good car. So that was one of the things to look at. Here, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this. And again, this is really, really easy to sit back and talk about on a Tuesday after the race has already happened. But this is from F1 Stats Guru. Amazing how they get this data. So this is Verstappen's overtake on Hamilton after the restart. Was mighty close, but inch perfect. So coming to the line, you cannot pass a car. You cannot be ahead of the guy at the start-finish line. You must be behind him, and then you can overtake him. If you watch the race, Verstappen gets this crazy good run on Hamilton. Hamilton pulls to the inside to block. Verstappen is about nose to nose. They touch the line, and then Verstappen goes and passes him. So this data right here, you have the speed and the throttle. All right, get my face out of the way. So as you see, they're both full throttle at this. Oh no. So they're both full throttle at this line. This big dip down here is Verstappen letting off the throttle to make sure he didn't pass Lewis before the line, picking back up the throttle. And as you see on the speed, even with the let off, that Red Bull was so fast in a straight line. They're both gaining speed gradually. There's this little... Okay, you can see the little drop down. That's Verstappen lifting off and then stepping on it, and he's still higher than Hamilton. Now, sitting back here now, this is real easy for me to say, but what would have been the situation if Hamilton just had let off and let Verstappen pass him at the line? I believe that it's a 10-second penalty if you pass someone. If you pass someone before the line. So what happens if Lewis lifts off on that? Does Verstappen go past him on the timing charts and then he gets a penalty either at the race or he has to hand the spot back right away and it doesn't change the end of the race? But looking back at it now, I almost think that Lewis should have kind of lifted off the throttle more. Max would have either had to slam on the brakes, probably wouldn't have had that, reaction time if Lewis would have just lifted or hit the brakes. And then Verstappen would have been hit with a big penalty. So I think that would have made the race interesting because as you see at the end, Verstappen wins by 4 seconds, not 10 seconds. Because that time penalty would have either been assessed at the next pit stop if he would have gotten 10 or at the end of the race. So that's just food for thought. Like if someone's ever in this situation next time, Lewis started real early, kind of before the last corner. You can start, I believe, like right up into the start-finish line because no one can pass you. So maybe that would have been another thing. Wait as long as he could so Max couldn't have had that straight line speed. I think in the end we knew the result was inevitable, that Max was going to win. But just some food for thought. Also a little bit of drama. Lewis admits this, but it's talked about if you listen to the radio. Bono, his race engineer, tells him to go strat 5 and use overtake as he'd like. And then he tells him to go strat 5 again, his race engineer. I don't know if Lewis maybe forgot, if he kind of was like flustered after the whole Russell pitting thing. Toto asked about it, and I think they asked the team about it. They said it wouldn't have made a difference. Even Lewis, just the pure speed that the Red Bull had in the straight line, he was kind of going to get driven past, like he had an anchor out behind him, regardless. But it's just something to think of, that I think Lewis was so flustered by the pit stop fiasco that he wasn't even in the right engine mode to get started. So just a little food for thought at that line. Man, Max is kind of just showing that he's a monster in all things right now, and I think he's kind of looking like he's the man on safety car restarts. If I was a Max fan, I'd feel very comfortable. If like I was a Lewis fan, or if I'm any other fan and Max is behind my driver on the start, I'm probably pretty nervous. So hats off to just one of the many tricks that Max Verstappen has in his bag, is he's really showing that he's kind of a safety car guru. All right, so I think the big thing here is the Hamilton pit stop drama. So I have super ghetto-ly made in pages what I believe to be all the scenarios that could have played out. So this is the scenario one, like I said, with that last restart. So this is actually what happened. They leave Hamilton out on mediums, Verstappen soft, fresh softs, Russell fresh soft, Leclerc fresh softs. Verstappen ends up passing Hamilton, Russell and Leclerc all pass Hamilton. So that's what we know happened. Other possibilities, and again, this is one where you guys tell me if there's another option that you see besides these four. Scenario 2 is that you keep Russell out. Okay, so now you have Hamilton first, Russell second, Verstappen on fresh softs in third, and Leclerc on softs on fourth. So Hamilton and Russell both have used mediums in this scenario on the restart. Now this is what Lewis was hoping for. He wanted that buffer in between him and Verstappen. Now I actually got it. I had this nice debate with a gentleman today, and he said that this would have been the way, and that Hamilton probably would have won. I still think that Verstappen would probably win it, but in this scenario right here, let's say Verstappen doesn't blow past George on the restart. Maybe it takes him 2 laps to get past Russell, but he uses up some of his tires. Then he catches Hamilton, which kind of proved hard to pass. That Red Bull so fast, but maybe he beats up his softs trying to pass Hamilton at the end, and he can't get past them. I think that's what Hamilton was hoping for, because he wasn't really worried about Russell in this scenario. He's selfishly worried about himself. That's what race drivers do. They're there to win. They're not there to finish any other place. In that scenario, Russell probably on mediums definitely finishes fourth. Hamilton probably finishes at best, or at worst, like second. I bet he could hold on to second. Maybe he loses second, and Mercedes finishes 3-4. So what actually happens is Mercedes finishes 2-4. But that was probably their best shot to win the race. Toto afterwards, right away, they asked him about it. He said that they were kind of screwed either way. I think both mediums gave you your best shot for Hamilton to win the race, but your results might have taken a hit, especially when, like, I believe everyone after Leclerc, Sainz, Perez all pitted for soft. So I bet they were worried about everyone else. But I think keeping Russell out is your best shot to win the race, if there was a shot. Pit both Mercedes drivers, okay? So I went back, watched the footage. I have to double check, but if you pit both Mercedes drivers, Verstappen comes out, starts the restart first, Hamilton second, and then it was kind of tight in pit road. I think they would have been fine. I think if they would have double stacked properly, Russell would have been third, and then Leclerc would have been fourth. And I think that would have been the finish order: Verstappen, Hamilton, Russell, and Leclerc. I have a little graph data here, so this will show maybe or maybe not. Okay, so this shows sorry, I thought I had this all set. Oh, okay. This shows George Russell's and Lewis Hamilton's lap times throughout the race. So if we could get it zoomed in properly, um, they're pretty even through the beginning of the race. I think if you watch the race, I think like their interval gaps always stayed the same. They kind of traded fast laps. These big spikes are like pit stops. So, their first run on the medium tires, they're both pretty much the same. Their little second stint here, with besides this one little spike, I believe that was when he was racing with Perez and Vettel. Their lap times are basically the same. So take into the consideration that both cars were pretty much the same lap times throughout the race. When you go to the finish order, George Russell's 4 seconds ahead of Verstappen. Now, George had to spend a lap or two passing Hamilton, so he lost a little bit of time. But I want to say that he had about 2 seconds. He had about 2 seconds of a gap maybe when George Russell passed Lewis Hamilton. So I think looking at that chart right there, this shows that the cars were kind of normal. Russell passes Hamilton for second place, 2 seconds behind Verstappen. They're all Verstappen and Russell are on fresh softs. And until the end of the race, Verstappen increases that gap by another 2 seconds. So I think if you pit both Mercedes, you throwing the win out the window, because Max, I think, proved that he was the faster car. Because even though Hamilton is second, I think that chart shows that Hamilton and Russell ran similar lap times all race, so their cars are about the same, and that Verstappen would have pulled out that same gap. So I think you would more secure your second and third place by bringing both Mercedes drivers in. Well, there's a fourth scenario here. You pit just Hamilton. So you leave Russell out, so he'll be in first place. He'll be kind of left out to dry like Hamilton was on mediums. Verstappen softs in second, Hamilton softs in third, Leclerc softs in fourth. And I think all you have here is a reverse situation of what happened. I think Verstappen probably still would have got by Russell. Hamilton would have probably finished second, Leclerc third, and Russell probably would have fell down to fourth. Again, though, you take into consideration, though, whenever you put a teammate ahead of someone, like Sergio Perez is probably one of the best drivers out there that's a teammate. Meaning, Max Verstappen is clearly the number one driver on Red Bull. Perez is the second. He showed last year with amazing battles against Hamilton to keep him behind. Abu Dhabi, he cost Hamilton like almost 10 seconds, I think, if not more. Insane. And Hamilton went to pass him. Perez, he threw it in real hard, almost locked up and crashed him, and then just ran Hamilton wide. Maybe a little aggressive, but it's racing. Keeps Hamilton behind for another second. Like I said, causes him to lose 3 seconds in the race. That's just what I would like to see more out of Russell. When Verstappen got to Russell to pass him during the race, I thought he might be able to keep him behind for a lap or two. Unless that Red Bull was just that fast. Verstappen just killed Russell in one straightaway. But the scenario for you just pit Hamilton, you're making Verstappen pass Russell. Russell might be able to hold him up, and in that mess, you might have a chance for a hard block or something. Verstappen gets squarely, and now Hamilton gets past Verstappen and Russell with fresh softs. So that's the kind of the four scenarios that I had. I didn't see any other scenarios in my mind. I don't know if there's, like I said, I got fifth scenario. You guys tell me if there's, another thing, or if you thought Mercedes did the right thing, the wrong thing. The big thing is that everyone was joking around that it's Ferrari strategy. I don't think it's as bad as Ferrari strategy by any means. I think you were looking at a second and third place finish, most likely. Verstappen, Hamilton, and Russell, if you would have pitted both of them. Back to scenario 3. And really, you traded like a 2. I saw this comment on the internet from some people. You traded a 2 and 3 for a 2 and a 4 for the team, for constructors. So that's not like the end of the world, in my opinion. Me as the Hamilton fan would have liked scenario 2 to see Hamilton maybe have a shot of winning if Russell could have kept him behind, and so could Lewis. But you trade in a 2-3 for a 2 and a 4. It's not a bad day. You had a card that showed pace. I think if you're on the team, you're starting to see momentum. Ferrari now needs to really be worried, not just about you on Sunday, but now they need to worry about you on Saturday because they had some good qualifying sessions going. So those are the 4 scenarios. Please take your time to chime in as we're going to go back and we're going to look at the standings here. So Max wins. Big 310 points that he has. You guys like process what's going on here right now? 109 points that Charles Leclerc is behind. Remember, 26 points for a race win. As my buddy Julian made fun of me for struggling with the math last time, so I'm not going to try to figure out how many races it is. But I believe it's like 4 races. That's huge. The championship is just his to lose. There's only a handful of races left. So, but to me, it gets exciting after that. So Sergio Perez, because Leclerc finished 3rd and Perez finished 5th. They're tied at 201. Lurking right behind there is Mr. Consistent at 188. So listen, if I was George Russell, with the subpar car that he had at the beginning of the year and how much better that car is looking now, he's only 13 points behind 2nd place. I'd be pretty pumped. Carlos Sainz 175. We'll see what he can do, but I think they're starting to see Mercedes creep up. I think he'll float in that 5th or 6th spot. And Lewis down there in 158. So a decent points day for Lewis. But just, after a spot last week, not getting any points. I think the best you're going to see Lewis finishes 5th, maybe 4th, depending on how these last couple races go. And then you go to the team standings. I know I ditched everyone else. I guess we could go back and talk about them. But Red Bull 511. Ferrari sitting there at 376, so they're massively behind. What is that? 135 points behind. Mercedes creeping up, 346. So they're only 30 points behind Ferrari. I do think they have a legit shot at number 2. Alpine, again, another good finish, puts them at 125. And then 5th is McLaren at 101. That's why that battle that I was talking about, Norris against Ocon and Alonso, is so important, because placement matters, but then you're getting a double points finish versus a single points finish. And if you guys don't know, the big money that's dished out at the end of the year is for the constructors standings. Haas is kind of floating here in 7th, AlphaTauri in 8th, Aston 9th, and Williams in 10th. I'll go back to the drivers because I did not show any love to anyone under 6th place. So Lando 7th, Esteban Ocon 8th, Fernando 9th. I believe I saw that Fernando has 10 consecutive points finishes. A couple P8s, P9s, P10s. So not like 1st and 2nds like Max has been laying out lately. But consecutive points finish nonetheless. That's good for team morale. It obviously has them, right in that fight with McLaren for the constructor. So Lando 7th, Esteban 8th, Fernando 9th. Bottas with, I believe, the majority of those points coming from the beginning of the season in 10th. And then, Magnussen 11th, Vettel 12th, Ricciardo 13th, Pierre 14th, Mick 15th, Yuki 16th, Joe Guanyu 17th, Lance Stroll 18th. He needed those points that he got, I believe, this weekend. Alex Albon 19th, which is great for his Williams car. Latifi 20th, and Nico Hulkenberg, who only raced once or twice, 21st. But again, this is I did the math last week, and I'll do it again. I'll bore you guys to death with it, but Max finished 1st and got the fastest lap, so that's 26 points. 2nd place is 18. 3rd place is 15, so you're looking at 33 points if you finish 2nd and 3rd. So, Mercedes would have only closed a 7-point gap on Red Bull if they would have finished 2nd and 3rd, which they didn't. And as you can see, they are, 100 and something points behind, and they would have only closed the gap by 7. And then when you have Perez finishing 5th, a couple more points on there. So, Red Bull looks like they're going to comfortably do this. I believe that was Max's 4th win in a row. France, Spa, not in this order. It's actually, I think it's France, Hungary, Spa, and then Netherlands. So 4 in a row is pretty impressive. I think he's chasing that streak of winning every race after the summer break, which I believe Sebastian Vettel in the Red Bull is the only driver to do that. So he's chasing that hard. I believe that's all the nerd stuff that I had for you guys. Reddit kind of posted out a little post basically just transcribing the conversation between Lewis and his engineer, and then Russell and his engineer, and that's a good look. Where Russell wants to put the softs on. They say he's staying out. Russell again with the softs. Russell, if I'm only going to lose out to Verstappen, if it's only Leclerc, because I think Russell knew he could probably pass Leclerc. He's happy to box. And then Russell confirmed staying out. He said, why not? Let's put on the softs, losing the tires. And then they told him to box. Whereas, Hamilton's over here. What tires? Verstappen went on to the softs. Hamilton, how many laps? Engineer 15 to go. Hamilton's understood. So they're telling everyone to come down the pit lane. This is like what I said. He sees his team come out. He looks in his rearview mirror. He sees George pull over. Asks, why did you stop George? I don't know, Lewis. I'll let you know. Because in that situation, Lewis's race engineer does not know the decisions of Russell. That's between the strategist and his engineer, most likely in that exact moment. And then that's when Hamilton makes his first comment. That was a mistake. We had track position. And then he kind of goes off after that. So that was Zandvoort. It provided excitement, in my opinion. More excitement than Zandvoort usually describes. I would have loved to see the race strategy play out. I think it was, as the commentator said, it was like a whole different race. And then when Verstappen gets those kind of free pit stops and is able to, stop and stay ahead and then stop and start, right on Hamilton's bumper with fresh tires, it kind of was a whole different race. The race was nowhere near the same. So we go to Monza next week, Italy. I believe Ferrari's busting out a special yellow paint scheme for that race. Red Bull's known to be better on a smaller track. Red Bull's better to be known on a bigger track. They got more straight line speed, and Monza is a lot of fast straight lines. Ferrari's known to be better on smaller circuits this year, even though it's their home race. Mercedes has not proved to be good in a straight line, especially if you look at Spa. They were like one of the slower cars in the speed trap. So it'll be interesting to see if they bring a low downforce package that's fast enough to keep up with maybe Red Bull, and Ferrari. Monza has a lot of history. It's the last of our triple header. So that'll be exciting. I would definitely watch that. Sometimes they can get in. They did a sprint race last year there too, so they might do another sprint race there again this year. I'll look that up right now. If you don't have the F1 calendar synced to your phone through Google, I highly suggest that. Saturday, as I look through the schedule, and it won't work for me, of course. No, there is no sprint race this year. Just practice. No sprint race. So I take that back. So Monza, it's gonna be good. I would stay tuned in. Let's see if Max can go for 5 in a row. Let's see if someone can break that. I mean, if it's a straight line track and Red Bull has been showing nothing but disgusting straight line speed, I think they are poised to win another race. Also, in my opinion, sex doesn't matter at all when it comes to what you do in the racing scene. But Red Bull's strategist has been getting a lot of love right now. Their head strategist is a female, and she is disgustingly good. So, because they did everything right on Sunday. Some things worked in their favor, but they still made all the right calls. And she's in charge of that. And I believe this is like the second good strategy race. Hungary was a great strategy race that she called. Even though he spun out, she still made all the right calls there. So shouts out to their chief strategist. She's getting a lot of clout, I think, because she's a female. She's getting like more clout than I've seen, but she absolutely deserves 1010% of it. And it's just cool to see. She deserves everything that she's getting. So as we go into our last bit of nonsense, all things racing, start by talking about the Xfinity race. I didn't watch it, but my dad watched it and told me all about it, and it sounded crazy, so I had to go back and watch the highlights. And if you are, let's pull up the results here. So you got Noah Gragson first, Sheldon Creed second, AJ Allmendinger in third, and then Justin Allgaier fourth, Kyle Larson fifth. That does not go to show any part of what actually happened. Larson catches Sheldon Creed, basically passes him down the front stretch, white flag lap. Sheldon kind of cuts him down low. They both go into the wall through 1 and 2. Coming out of 2, Gragson gets a big run, goes 3 wide, sends it into the corner. Sheldon Creed keeps his foot completely in the gas, tries to wall ride it like something we used to do back in the old NASCAR games, video games. He sends it in fast. Gragson hits the wall, comes off the wall. Sheldon Creed can't get off the wall. Gragson gets a run coming out of 4 and wins the race. 1000% recommend that. My review of that was not as good as it actually was. So make sure you go YouTube the Xfinity race highlights. But Sheldon Creed was a sport about it. Kyle Larson was a sport about it. No one was mad. It was all hard racing. It was for Sheldon Creed's first win. Would have been good for their playoffs scenario. But just I highly, highly, highly recommend you guys go watch that recap, those highlights. NASCAR race, Eric Jones. They just started the first round of the playoffs. Eric Jones, Petty Motorsports, they little merger this year. But Eric Jones, first place. That's kind of a I believe it was like their 200th win or something. They said it was crazy. He's actually not in the playoffs. But you look at Hamlin seconds in the playoffs, Reddick thirds in the playoff, Logano, Christopher Bell in fifth, all in the playoffs. So they all had a good run. Believe too, watching the highlights from that Kyle Busch was leading the race, then he blew up. The fans were going crazy. So NASCAR race was pretty good. And then I'll go back to our full screen here, and then I'll pull up the results, because you know we're always going to talk about the World of Outlaws. So we like our dirt racing. The World of Outlaws sprint cars. We are a little biased towards the sprint cars here, more than the late models. We'll get. So they were in Washington for 3 nights at Skagit Speedway for the Skagit Nationals. On Thursday night, Schuhart first, Sweet second, Donnie Schatz third, Macedo fourth, and our boy David Gravel fifth. So that was Thursday night. Friday night, Sheldon wins Haudenschild first, Jacob Allen second, Carson Macedo, he's been running really good, third, Joel Myers fourth, and Brad Sweet fifth. Then their last and final night Saturday, our boy David Gravel brings home that W. Brad Sweet second, Spencer Bayston third, James McFadden fourth, and Robbie Price in that Jason Side 7S with an impressive 5th place finish. And then to top that off, because if you don't know anything about the World of Outlaws, and this is the first you're hearing about them, they race, I think, 80-something races in a year. So, Formula One's cool. We watch them every Sunday, or not every Sunday. We watch them on Sundays. NASCAR, same thing. Sundays, maybe Saturday. World of Outlaws will sometimes, like this, give you races the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd of September. They took off the 4th. Then they went to Grays Harbor Raceway last night for a little Labor Day race. So just so much racing from them, so much excitement. I highly recommend that you watch the World of Outlaws. I have a rant to go on after this. Macedo first, David Gravel second, Jacob Allen third, Brad Sweet fourth, and Donnie Schatz fifth. So that's all things racing. If you guys have any comments while I'm about to go on this rant, please leave them in the chat box. Let's talk. I believe the chat box is working. All right. So when I started this, I did not know what it was going to be. I still don't know what it's going to be. Like I said, live show, maybe podcast. But I just wanted to talk about racing. Maybe one day my chat will be full and I'll just be interacting with people and we'll just kind of be discussing and spitting stuff back and forth at each other. Maybe it'll just be me talking to my wife and my dad forever. But I did not expect that, I can't believe I almost forgot this, that every single week I would have to be talking about how bad Ferrari is as a team. Again, I don't understand how you're a fan and you're not burning the streets over there demanding changes. Again, I've never seen it in any sport where a team can be so incompetent. And maybe I'm not hearing about the changes. Maybe through my news channels, I'm not seeing the things. But I don't understand how you can have a team be so incompetent for so consistently be bad and still no changes happen whatsoever. One thing that we didn't talk about in this race is, and let me tell you, I really like Charles Leclerc. I think he's a great driver. I don't know him personally, obviously, but he seems like a cool dude. Carlos Sainz, same thing. Great driver, cool dude. If you actually look back in Carlos Sainz's history, he's teammates with Max Verstappen, AlphaTauri. And if you look at Helmut Marko, who's he is the principal at Red Bull. Nah, that's Christian Horner. He has an official title. That's important. He says that Carlos Sainz was really good at AlphaTauri, but his only problem was that Max Verstappen was his teammate who was a little bit better, so he got promoted. But Carlos Sainz has been good for a while too. They don't deserve, like, Charles Leclerc wrecking at France. That's on him. France, you stop sites. You do an unsafe release. You cost them a time penalty. You don't pit him at the right time. You pit him when you don't need to. You cost them positions there. Spa, you pit Charles Leclerc. Literally, if you hear on the engineer tells him to pit, Leclerc's like, "Are you sure?" Like, I don't think it's the right thing to do, and they tell him to pit anyways. He loses his spot and gets a speeding penalty. Then this week, Carlos Sainz does nothing wrong, at least from my end. I haven't heard, I don't think he pitted on his own. I believe the team told him to box. He goes in, missing a left rear tire. Okay, that sends him far back in the race. After that happened, there was no shot of him finishing, where he was running third. He was running third. He was ahead of Hamilton. Most likely Hamilton would have surpassed him throughout the race. But there was, at that point, a 12-second pit stop because you don't have the left rear tire out in time. What are you guys doing? Not to mention, okay, that in one of our later restarts in the race where he's actually worked his way kind of sitting in fifth, you unsafe release him again and cost him a time penalty that drops him down to eighth. If you don't know how Formula One pit stops work too, there's a light right in front of their face, okay? When they pit, they drop the car, and it's a red and a green light, okay? So the drivers don't go if it's red because that's how you get an unsafe release. Okay, the light needs to be green. They release him again, okay, in front of cars. A 5-second penalty that costs him more spots. Oh my gosh. Charles Leclerc, third. That's the best he could have done. He probably really should have finished fourth, but he's a good pace. They did know the strategy right. It's kind of just a boring race. He was in his zone. Qualifies second. I think he gets the absolute most out of that car. But if you're a Ferrari fan, how are you okay with management staying the same and perform Mercedes had a blunder, blunder. Yeah, 2 years ago, I believe it was, when they had George Russell in their car, for Lewis Hamilton when he was out for COVID, and they had a tire mistake. Okay, now it's not great. Okay, but here's the thing. Winning fixes everything. Mercedes has won the last 8 constructor championships in a row. So when you have a blunder like that, it sucks, but you know what fixes everything? Winning. Okay? Ferrari has a blunder, but they're not winning. They're not doing anything to say, okay, yes, we had this mistake this week, or we had this mistake the past 2 weeks, but our team is in good hands. We got a good man sailing the ship. We'll be fine. No. They keep incompetence after incompetence after incompetence, and nothing changes whatsoever. I've never seen anything like it. If you were this bad at your job as Ferrari management is at theirs, someone would definitely be getting fired. I know if I was this bad at my regular job, I would expect to be let go. I would not, mistake after mistake after mistake, and nothing changes whatsoever. I don't get it. It's so bad. And we're making not just strategy, this strategy call from Mercedes is questionable, but really when you sit back on it, like I said, second and third, they finished second and fourth. Okay, not that bad. We're not talking about tough strategy calls that they're maybe getting wrong looking back in hindsight, which is real easy. We're talking about not having tires out, unsafe releases, engines that can't stay together. Luckily they have now, and now they're not running, as good. It's despicable. I'm so sorry for Ferrari fans out there. I'm so sorry to Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz. This is another wasted season where they almost looked like they could have been contending for championships, and now they asked Charles Leclerc, like, oh, it's not over, but do you still think you stand a chance? And he had to be like, I think, like, after Spa, we realized, like, probably over. I'm not going to say that because the world would hate me, but really, we know it's over. And because my team stinks. So that's that. Ferrari fans, God bless you. You must have Jesus on your side with all this patience, because if this was Mercedes messing up, I would absolutely lose it. So that's my rant. We go to Monza, their home race. I so pray that they don't mess it up, even though we've seen them mess it up there before. So it would be cool to see a Ferrari in victory lane there, because they go absolutely nuts. But I think you're going to be seeing a Red Bull in victory lane, and probably a Mercedes close behind it. Let's hope. All right, guys. So we'll be back next Tuesday. Hopefully maybe you guys bring some stuff to the chat next week. If not, I'll just be here talking to myself again. I appreciate you guys for watching. The three of you are probably already three who are liked and subscribed to the channel, but if you have not yet liked and subscribed, that'd be amazing, and that'd help me out. Twitter, Instagram too. I'll have to get down in the description soon, but we're working on everything, making it better, more professional as the time goes. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching.